Shalom, everybody. Welcome back with insights on the Parsha of the week, Parshat VaYigash. Part of the Parsha, the end part, deals with the descent of Jacob and his children and grandchildren into Egypt, and it lists in details the names of the grandchildren and the children, so you can get to the calculation of how we come to 70 souls that Jacob descended to Egypt. Of them, we have the 10 sons of Binyamin. Okay, this is in the Chumash, chapter 46, verse 21. Uvnei Binyamin, and the sons of Binyamin are the following. There's 10 sons. Bela, Vavecher, Ve'ashbel, Gera, Ve'naaman, Echi, Varosh, Mupim, Vechupim, Va'ard. In last week's Parsha, Miketz, Rashi brings down the Gemara's discussion. This is the Gemara in Sota, page 36b, of when Yosef saw Binyamin for the first time. He asked him, are you married? He said, yes. And do you have children? He said, yes, I have 10 sons. And Yosef asked, what are their names? And Binyamin listed the names. And Yosef asked, what's the meaning behind the names? So, for example, he says, what's Bela? The son Bela is from the wording to be nivla, swallowed up. That my brother Yosef was swallowed up amongst the nations. Becher is something positive now, that he's my Bechor. He's the firstborn, he's above me. He's the brother I look up to. Ashbel is that Hashem imprisoned him. Shava, Shavui. He was Shavui amongst the nations. Gera, he's like a sojourner, not someone who's fixed, but someone who's sojourning in Egypt. He has no place of where he lives. Naaman, that he's Naim, that he's pleasant. Achi, my brother. Varosh, my brother, that's my head. So something similar to Bechor, but Bechor is more the first. Becher is Bechor, the firstborn. But Achi Varosh, my brother who I look up to, is my head. Mupim, that means like he's very like, Mupim is like looked down upon. He's very low. Chupim, he didn't see my wedding. Chupa, I didn't see his wedding. Va'ard, he went down into Egypt. So we have here the 10 names. The Maharal of Prague points out, of the 10 names, 5 indicate the stature, the positive stature of Yosef, and 5 list the types of sufferings that Yosef went through, adding up to 10. So the Gemara says something unbelievable, and it's very Kabbalistic and very strange that the Gemara should say this, but then again you see, like the Maharsha says, that all the secrets of the Torah are hidden in the stories of the Gemara. That's how powerful and far-reaching is the Talmud, that even the deepest secrets of the Kabbalah are hinted to in the Gemara, the stories, the tales of the Talmud. So the Talmud says something amazing. How come Binyamin had so many sons? More than any other of the children of Yaakov, Binyamin had 10. So the Gemara says that really these 10 sons were supposed to be belonging to Yosef. Because the Gemara says whatever happened to Yosef was supposed to happen, whatever happened to Yaakov was supposed to happen to Yosef. So just like Yaakov had 12 sons, Yosef was supposed to have 12 sons. In the end, he only had 2. He had Ephraim and Menashe. What happened to the 10? So the Gemara says something unbelievable, is that when Yosef was being tempted by Potiphar's wife, and the sexual burning urge was strong, and again, we're talking about a big tzaddik, so it's at a very high level, the Zohar says, when he's not like a gross, physical, low person. But it's 2 factors, is that Potiphar's wife was exceedingly beautiful, very beautiful, and number 2, he was being tested from a higher level of like an angelic level of passion. So what did Yosef do? He dug his toes into the earth in order that he should feel pain of his toes, his toenails digging into the floor, so that pain should take away, distract him from the sexual heating and temptation. And instead what happened is 10 drops of seed came out from the knuckles, kishrei etzbeotav, the 10 knuckles of his 10 fingers. So Yosef has 10 fingers. From the 10 fingers came out 10 drops of semen, of seed, as opposed to coming from a normal place. So therefore he's not liable for wasting seed because it didn't come out in a normal way. It didn't come out with a feeling of pleasure, which happens when there's actual sexual intercourse and sexual emission. It happened in a different way that it came out in a place which is not normal at all for seed to come out, in the knuckles of the fingers. But nonetheless, it was considered wasted seed. And these 10 drops, Yosef lost out on having them. So instead, the Gemara says, Binyamin was to make up for Yosef's lost 10 souls, 10 sons. And then he had these 10 sons, which are really credit to Yosef, but they're called the sons of Binyamin, okay? This is something unbelievable when you hear this, because Rebbe Nachman talks about the concept of the Tikkun HaKlali. And the Tikkun HaKlali involves reciting 10 specific chapters of Psalms, Tehillim, from the book of Tehillim. For those who don't know about them, they're called, the numbers in order are 16, 32, 41, 42, 59, 77, 90, 105, 137, and 150. I think I didn't miss anything there. And these 10 chapters correspond to the 10 types of melodies that were used in composing the book of Tehillim. There's 10 types of musical instruments and musical formats: lamnatseach, shir, nigun, tefillah, bracha, maskil. Okay, you have a list of 10 of them, and they're hinted to in these 10 specific chapters, and all involve using the fingers to play the instruments. There's no instruments that just have the mouthpiece, but there's a flute, there's a fiddle, there's the harp, there's a guitar. All of them involve fingers. So the combination of the fingers together bring out the 10 types of song. Okay? So they're hinted to the 10 types of fingers. So Yosef lost out. He was being tempted, but he passed the test but didn't pass. He passed the test that he didn't commit the sin with actual transgression with Potiphar's wife, but he did lose the 10 drops through his fingers. Why through the fingers and through the knuckles of the fingers? Because the fingers show where the place to be rectified of losing 10 drops of semen, or semen in general, involves the activation of the 10 types of melody, which are entered to the 10 types of fingers. This concept of the fingers and melody is also stressed by Rebbe Nachman in his last story of the tales of Rebbe Nachman, Sipur Ma'asiyot, the stories, Rebbe Nachman's stories, the last story, number 13, on the 6th day of the beggar with no hands, that he's able with his 10 fingers to place them on the princess who was injected with 10 arrows, each one dipped in a different severe type of poison. So 10 types of poison on the 10 types of arrows, which entered her. Again, this is like the story that Rebbe Nachman's giving. Don't take it literally. And he's able with his 10 fingers to extract the poison, which has really made her sick, and then heal her. And this Rebbe Nachman teaches also the idea of the 10 types of song, which are connected in the 10 types of fingers, and that being the healing, especially for blemished covenant, the sexual blemishes. So Yosef lost out 10 drops from his fingers. Why the fingers? To show that the rectification involves melody, where melody is a powerful format of Simcha to activate the rectification. For this reason, Binyamin was given the merit to have the rectification of the 10 lost souls of Yosef come through him. Because Binyamin, in his name itself, and who he was the only tribe born in Eretz Yisrael. That's why he's called Binyamin. Binyamin, Rashi points out, the son born on the right side. That when facing westward, I think it's westward or eastward, Eretz Yisrael will be on the right side, So since Jacob was coming from Aram to Eretz Yisrael, and if you face eastbound, Eretz Yisrael would be on the right side because he's coming from the north. From the northeast corner, he's coming down to Eretz Yisrael. From Aram down to Eretz Yisrael. So he's the only one born in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Nosson goes on, and he says Yamin, the right, also connotes kindness, connotes light, connotes happiness. That's the idea of Yamin. Right is always doing good and feeling positive and happy and light and encouragement. So Binyamin in himself signifies the concept of joy and melody also, because the greatest place where music took place ever in the world was in the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash being located in Eretz Yisrael. So Binyamin being born in Eretz Yisrael represents the power of melody and song and joy found in Eretz Yisrael. So he was given the mission to rectify the damage of Yosef HaTzadik's 10 lost children. The question is, why did Yosef HaTzadik come to this? He was such a holy tzaddik, such a good person. Why in the world would he lose this out? So, Rav Nosson explains that you have Yaakov, Yosef, and Esav. Yaakov, the verse reads, is Beit Yaakov will be, the house of Jacob will be like a flame, a fire, and the house of Yosef will be like the flame of the fire, which goes out to destroy, and the house of Esav will be like straw, which will be burnt by the flame, which is Yosef. This is why Rashi brings down, once Yosef was born, and Yaakov had no longer any fear of facing challenges from Esav, he went back to Eretz Yisrael only once Yosef was born. Okay? Because Yosef is the counterpart to fight against Esav. So Yosef is the idea of hitlahavut. Hitlahavut means someone who's very enthusiastic in his service of Hashem and giving him power and strength. That's what's needed to subdue Esav. Okay? Also, Rav Nosson explains that Yosef is the concept of additional joy, where a person works on in being enthusiastic, encouraging himself in order to bring upon extra additional happiness. However, the Torah is showing us that still, because he was not born in Eretz Yisrael like Binyamin, Binyamin had an upper hand over Yosef, which is why the Beit HaMikdash, both temples, were built on the spot of land belonging to Binyamin. That's this week's Parshah, where it says when Yosef saw Binyamin, so Binyamin cried on Yosef's neck, one neck, singular term, whereas Yosef cried on Binyamin's necks, both sides. Rashi points out, the first temple that was destroyed eventually, and the second temple that would be built and destroyed also. So there's two temples, and Binyamin has the upper hand that he has both temples, and eventually the third temple also will be built in his plot of land. Why? Because Binyamin, as opposed to Yosef, who are the tribes of Menashe and Ephraim, okay, he is totally absorbed in Eretz Yisrael. That's the idea of Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin, the son of the right side, the son of Simcha, of joy, of Kedusha, of happiness, holiness, whatever you want to call it. So even though Yosef HaTzadik was as great as he was, and he is an outstanding tzaddik, still, without Eretz Yisrael, without the joy and the melodies which are associated with the temple in Eretz Yisrael, Yosef is still considered incomplete, which is why the commentators say this had to happen to him. He had to lose the 10 drops of seed, and it had to come out eventually through his brother Binyamin. Now you notice 5 names of Binyamin's son connote the respected status of Yosef, like we went through, and 5 are the difficulties. Why 5 and 5? Making up 10, of course, but why 5 and 5? Because like we said in previous classes, there are 5 major ways of activating Simcha. The hey of Simcha. The hey voices of joy. Kol sason, kol simcha, kol chatan, kol kala, kol omrim hodu Hashem kitov. It's a verse which depicts the 5 types of sounds of joy. The sound of a chatan, joyous. The sound of the kala, joyous. Right? I skipped the kol sason, the sound of delight, the sound of joy, the sound of the chatan, the sound of the kala, the sound of those who are praising Hashem, saying, thank you, Hodul Hashem Kitov, praise, give thanks to Hashem, because Hashem is good and forever is His kindness. So these 5 are presented in the 5 attributes of Yosef HaTzadik. But to be tested and purged, he had to go through also -5 to bring out his true essence of joy, which he eventually did come to, proof being he became the viceroy. He was a successful man. So we have the 5 and the counterpart of the 5 making up the 10. Interestingly, on this aside point, in Rebbe Nachman's lesson that he reveals the 10 verses which talk about how the 10 types of melody can rectify any blemish of the covenant. It's a lesson in Likutey Moharan, part 2, lesson 92. So in them, he brings 10 verses. 5 are from the book of Tehillim, and the other 5 are half part are from the book of Proverbs and part from the book of Eov. So what's interesting is also in the power of melody, you have 5 melodies which are just so beautiful and overwhelming that they just take over. They don't have to push away bad because it happens automatically on the presence of these 5 types of melodies. You have 5 other melodies which work to first push out melancholy, to push out sadness and depression, and then activate the actual song. You have types of melodies that work like that. They get into a person, there may be slow tunes, and then they connect to the person in the emotional level, kick out the atzvut, the sadness, and then bring out the joy. But the other 5, which hinted to in the 5 verses from the book of Psalms, these 5 are majestic. And automatically, as soon as they come, it's only good. There's no need to push out the bad, because the bad is just left on its own already before anything, because of the majestic expression of these 5 types of melodies. So even in the 5 types of melodies, you have those which present the stature and the grandeur of melody, and you have the 5 which work with first going to the where the sadness is, a slow, like not dreadful, but a slow, morbid tune, which at first gets to the person who's stuck in the sadness, and then lifts him up. Okay, so these are the 5 and the 5 which make up the 10, all to show us again in this week's parsha that even Yosef Tzaddik, as great as he was, he still needs the power of happiness and melody found in Eretz Yisrael, which is why Binyamin in the end got the merit to complete the 12 tribes that Yosef was destined to. And since they both have the same father and same mother, the mother was Rachel for both Yosef and Binyamin, Yaakov the father of both Yosef and Binyamin, so Binyamin in a sense is considered like this extension, which is why in the Parshas, Yosef made such a big deal of wanting them to bring down Binyamin and for him to meet him. And like Rashi also depicts the emotional pain and joy, whatever Yosef was going through when he asked over in this dialogue that's in the Gemara in Sota 36, and then Rashi brings down of Yosef asking Binyamin the names of the children and going into the details, and then like the verse says, he couldn't hold himself back and he went to a side room and started to cry from emotion. The emotion being, of course, joy. So Shabbat Shalom, and may we activate the 10 types of melody to be Simcha, always Bezrat Hashem, and by doing so activate upon us the holiness of the tribe of Binyamin, which is the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. And the more we actually connect to the joy of Eretz Yisrael, we have better chances of speeding up the coming of Mashiach. Shabbat Shalom U'Barach.